Hello everyone, welcome back. This is my video for the week, and I must confess to you, I did something last week that I have never done before on this channel. I had a video ready to post, fully edited, and it was scheduled to drop on Saturday. Unfortunately, news came out about Matt Riddle's release that rendered that video out of date. And so I ultimately decided to take the video down. Rather than look like I was way behind on everything that was going on, I just decided go ahead and take the video down and we'll just put one up next week. So if you're wondering why there was no video last week when I said there was going to be, that's why. That's what happened. It became overcome by events, OBE. So that was that. But I hope you all had a good week. I hope everything is going well, and I've got some stuff to talk about in the world of professional wrestling. But before I jump into that, reminder that Godzilla the Monster Fight Record Volumes 1 and 2 are available for purchase on both Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. So be sure to check that out. I am also in the process of scheduling my book tour, which involves me going on a few interviews with several blogs, and hopefully some YouTube creators. We'll see how that goes. But we're in the planning stages of getting a book tour established and get the word out that the book is on sale. But you can purchase the book now. Like I said, it was available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. The links are in the description. So let's talk some pro wrestling. So the main topic of last week's video was in regards to both WWE and AEW and just the sheer glut of content that they are producing right now. I talked about a few other things like the WWE releases. I'd say Matt Riddle was probably the most surprising name, even though he's been a bit of a problem behind the scenes. I figured Matt was a guy that they had made up their minds that they just liked and that he would continue to be a part of the show moving forward as long as he didn't screw up too badly. But he got let go, and Dolph Ziggler, who I thought was going to be a lifer because he had been there for so long, he got let go. But other than that, I don't think anybody on there that was truly shocking as far as being released goes. There were no huge names or big shocks. So a lot of this has to do with the change of management within WWE, but I expect more changes are coming. We will see as that goes. But as far as the first round of releases go, nothing truly shocking. It just feels like more standard kind of annual spring cleaning type of deal with the releases, which, I feel bad for people losing their jobs and everything, but sometimes in the world of wrestling, getting let go from somewhere gives you an opportunity to get over elsewhere. So I wish them all the best, and hopefully we see some of these people pop up elsewhere. Hopefully not in AEW, because that roster is bloated enough as it is. But yeah, so there's that. And again, the whole there's talks about the futures of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, what they're going to look like moving forward. We've heard that SmackDown's going to be going to USA. Again, I'll have more to say as we know more and things become a little bit more concrete. But like I said, changes are coming. But the main thing I wanted to talk about last week that I will now talk about here is, like I said, the sheer volume of content that is being produced on a weekly basis from WWE and AEW is too freaking much to handle. They are producing way too much content. And AEW has a pay-per-view coming up right after they just ran 2 pay-per-views a week apart from each other. They're now doing another pay-per-view so soon after that. And there's talks of AEW going to a once-a-month pay-per-view format, which I think is a terrible idea because they've got way too much programming as it is, and they've gotten to that same point where and this is something I criticize WWE for, where there's so much content, it's impossible to digest anything or let it breathe or let anything sink in, because it just feels like blunt force trauma trying to sit there and absorb all of this content. Because right now AEW's got a 2-hour Wednesday show, they've got a 1-hour Friday show, and they have a 2-hour Saturday show, and the 1-hour Friday show was 2 hours last week when they did Grand Slam, and it's just that's a lot of content. That is a lot of content to be producing on a weekly basis for a wrestling show, and especially when you kind of do what AEW's done. They've just fully subscribed to the idea that we need action. We need great action. Action from bell to bell. And so almost every match goes multiple segments, and they're almost all competitive matches. And it just feels like too much. It just feels like way too much. I feel like I'm watching it feels like they're trying to produce pay-per-view quality content every week, which makes the whole once-a-month pay-per-view format even more pointless, because why the hell would I pay $50 for a pay-per-view when you give me everything for free anyway? And look, I don't want to be overly critical of the shows. I think MJF and Adam Cole, even though Adam Cole's hurt now, we'll know how that impacts things creatively. But I think that stuff is still great. I thought Grand Slam was overall pretty good, but it's just every week they try to, do this massive like pay-per-view quality show all throughout the week, and it's too much to keep track of. And it's also hurt by the fact that they still haven't fully defined what the hell ROH is, and it's still rearing its ugly head on AEW programming every week, to where titles from ROH are being defended every single week, it seems. And this is interesting, and WWE's doing this with NXT too, and I wonder if this is going on. And I mentioned AEW's producing 5 hours of content a week. That's not counting Ring of Honor, which is... I tried watching the first few episodes of ROH after the relaunch, and every episode was like 2.5, 3 hours. I'm like, I'm not watching this every week. Nope, I'm out. I don't know what it looks like now, but I was like, these shows are too long. They're too long. For a show that's nothing but pure wrestling action from start to finish, it's way too long to watch that on a weekly basis. And I can't imagine too many people are watching it. But in any case, like I said, NXT, WWE's kind of doing this with NXT too, where main roster people are winning the NXT championships. You've got Becky Lynch as the NXT Women's Champion, and you got Dominic Mysterio as the North American Champion. And then over on AEW, you've got Eddie Kingston, who's a great talker, an established AEW guy, I would say at this point. He's the Ring of Honor Champion. You've got Samoa Joe as the TV Champion, and he's a known commodity in wrestling, and he just had a world title match against MJF. You got MJF and Adam Cole, who are the most overact in the company, as the ROH Tag Team Champions. And it makes me wonder, like, is there something going on with the two, like, lower tier brands of both shows, where is WWE... Are WWE and AEW preparing for some kind of a future with those lesser brands? Because... I mean, if AEW puts the ROH women's title on, like, Britt Baker, and the pure title on someone like Orange Cassidy or Darby Allin, and if WWE goes full force and puts the NXT title on someone like Gunther, or Finn Balor, or something like that, are they preparing for a future where those brands don't exist on television, or don't exist moving forward? I don't know. Or is something bigger coming up the pike for both NXT and ROH, and they're using bigger names to hold the titles to get them ready for that bigger relaunch of some kind? I have absolutely no idea. I know that the lines between the brands are poorly defined in both companies, because ROH is just showing up on AEW programming on a weekly basis. I don't know who the ROH people are or who the AEW people are, because it just seems to not matter. And Raw and SmackDown have NXT guys on it. Raw and SmackDown people are holding NXT titles, and then the Raw and SmackDown people jump back and forth between the two shows. So it's like, is there a brand split? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it, but yeah, AEW's got way too much content. I'm not excited at the prospect of them having monthly pay-per-views, because that was one of the reasons I liked AEW initially, because it wasn't too much. It was just one weekly show, and then you get a pay-per-view once every 4 months. And I'm like, this is great. I like it. It's paced perfectly. And then it's just turned into this monster where it's become way too much content to keep up with. And I think, when you have too much, you make yourself undesirable, because it's not destination television. It's not something that you have to go out of your way to see, and it's not something that you're waiting all week and chomping at the bits to actually watch, because it's spread out all over the week, and it just feels like normal. And you don't want to feel normal, you want to feel special. And that's been a problem in WWE for years. I've talked about it pretty much ever since I started doing this channel, that WWE's gotten way too much content. And this is before Raw went to 3 hours. This is before NXT was on TV every week as a 2-hour show. They've got, AEW's got 5 hours, I guess 7 or 8 if you count Ring of Honor. And then WWE's got 7 hours of content every week when you count Raw, NXT, and SmackDown. And I don't watch NXT. I gave up on them a long time ago. But it's, no one human being could possibly be expected to watch all of that content. And just to contrast, when I was a kid and I first started getting into WWF, because that was my first exposure to wrestling, they had multiple shows throughout the week, but they were 1-hour shows that all provided slightly different things. Like you had Wrestling Challenge on the weekends, and you had Superstars. And both shows were on Saturdays. And you would get angles, promos, and mostly squash matches. On Sundays, you had All-American Wrestling, which was basically the two hosts sitting in a studio and recapping the major events that happened throughout the week. So if you missed anything, you could watch All-American Wrestling, and that would pretty much catch you up to speed on anything that you missed. So, I'm saying they had like 5-6 hours of content a week back then, but one of them was a recap show. So, yeah, and again, there are these 1 hour bursts of energy that didn't feel too cumbersome. And you had Spotlight on Friday nights, which I don't recall ever watching. I don't think I ever watched Spotlight while it was on. I remember, I've seen clips of it, like of Vince and Miss Elizabeth hosting it, but I never actually watched it. So I couldn't tell you a whole heck of a lot about it because I didn't watch it back then. And then you had Primetime Wrestling on Monday nights, which I watched religiously, not for any match. Ask me to recall any match from Primetime Wrestling. I couldn't do it for you. I watched Primetime Wrestling entirely for Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. That show was the Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon Comedy Hour. That's what that show was. And then eventually it morphed into kind of the live studio setting with Vince and Bobby, which I didn't like as much. And then it evolved into the roundtable format, which I adored. I love that format for Primetime Wrestling. That was the last version of the show before ultimately shifting to Monday Night Raw. But the roundtable format, you had Vince McMahon, Bobby Heenan, Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, and then Gorilla Monsoon and one other babyface, like a Hillbilly Jim or somebody like that, having a roundtable discussion, and then they would have a special guest on. Like, one of my favorite episodes was the one where Undertaker and Paul Bearer were special guests, and Bobby Heenan was scared to death of The Undertaker. It was great stuff. They did Mr. Perfect's face turn in 92 on that show. It was great. I loved that version of Primetime Wrestling. And you can never do a show like that today because I don't think you have the personalities in the non-wrestling capacity that could carry a show like that. Like, you needed Bobby, you needed Gorilla, you needed... Even Vince at the head of the table worked. And you needed personalities like a Hillbilly Jim or a Mr. Perfect or an Undertaker or guys like that to cycle in and out to make that show funny. And I don't think you could pull a show like that off today. But yeah, that was a wrestling show that I watched every week, and it had nothing to do with the matches. I didn't care about the matches. I watched it purely for Bobby and Gorilla more than anything else. And I can truthfully say I never watched a wrestling show just for the talkers, the non-wrestlers. But that was a show I watched specifically for Bobby and Gorilla. Even Jim Ross in his prime, I can never say I watched a wrestling show just to listen to Jim Ross. But Primetime Wrestling, I listened to it every week just so I could get to hear Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon, and it was a delight. But, you had all that content, but most of it was just kind of like, it was mostly like filler material, and you didn't typically get really good matches every week because everything was about building towards the big show, selling the live events, and building towards the pay-per-views. So you didn't feel like you were just beat over the head with all of this constant wrestling content every single week. It was a lot more manageable. And I've said this with the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars, and a lot of people have said this about WCW, that one of the worst things they ever did, among many decisions that they made to ultimately bring the company down, one of the worst things they ever did was starting WCW Thunder, because it was just Nitro Jr. and it cut into the excitement of Nitro, because having another show in the middle of the week made Nitro feel less special, and you weren't waiting for it and salivating to crawl across, or wanting to crawl across broken glass to watch that show on Monday nights, because there was another show in the middle and it made it less exciting. And I argued it was the same thing with, I felt the exact same way about SmackDown. I think the negative impact of SmackDown wasn't felt as immediately. And it's not like WWF introduced SmackDown and everything just took a gigantic nosedive, because 2000 was a very exciting year for them creatively. But it's like that same excitement for Monday Night Raw wasn't quite there. And then eventually when the creative woes started, the glut of the content started to become more apparent. When the invasion angle started, it's like, do we really need 2 shows of this? Please, for the love of God, stop it. And the whole brand split concept, I mean, WWE's never done that well. They always get to a point where either one show is really good and the other one is really bad, or both of them are really bad, or guys are jumping back and forth anyway, so it doesn't even matter. So that's the thing that they've never fully executed well, in my opinion. And AEW and this whole thing they're doing with Ring of Honor is just a confusing mess, and I've given up trying to make sense out of the whole thing. And it's just way too much. It is way too much. And again, I go back to WCW. Everyone says that Thunder was a mistake, and yet I've lived to see so many companies, specifically WWE and AEW, go back to that WCW playbook that you need a second big show, and you really, really don't. It's just way too much, and then throwing pay-per-views on top of that, I think is just overkill. And the Ring of Honor running its own weekly shows and having its own pay-per-views, I think, is overkill. It's like, who the hell is watching all of this? There's too much wrestling content to keep up with anyway, and it's I don't know if part of the strategy is to just dominate as much of the airtime as possible to where they can't possibly want to check out any other wrestling, because if you watch nothing but WWE, how the hell are you going to make time for anything else? If you watch nothing but AEW/ROH, how are you going to make time for anything else? Personally, I'm enjoying Impact right now because it's just a simple little show that happens once a week. It's like, yeah, it does. It's not, it's 2 hours. They do big shows fairly often, but for the most part, Impact's just 2 hours a week, and it's not overly cumbersome. Not every show's great, but not every episode's great. But when they do something good, it stands out, and I enjoy it. And I enjoyed the 1,000 episode celebration that they just did, so that was fun. But when you look at WWE and AEW, and they're constantly filling their shows with these long competitive matches that constant chasing star ratings is how I've always referred to it as. We got to have these amazing matches every week, and I'm like, no, you don't. It's about story, character, conflict. Setting up things for the big matches down the road is what they should be doing. But when you just blow your load every week with just one big spot after another and one big competitive match after another without any rhyme or reason, it's just, it all becomes white noise after a while, and it becomes impossible to absorb it all. At least in my opinion. I don't know. I think the goal should be to connect with the audience and to create an interesting story or conflict that can generate interest within the audience. And they seem more interested in just getting their spots in and being as action-packed as humanly possible. And sometimes when you get the stories, they don't even work, because I think they focus more on the in-ring stuff when they should be working on kind of perfecting the non-wrestling stuff. Again, the stories and conflicts that make their matches actually mean something. Promos, definitely, that's something that a lot of people could improve in. It's a big area, and I'm trying to think. Is there anything else as far as major headlines go that I could talk about? Well, I am going to preview Wrestle Dream. I'm going to get into that. I'm not fully on board with buying the pay-per-view yet. We'll see how I feel day of. I'm more interested in watching football, even if my Giants do suck. I'm more interested in watching that. But yeah, I'm not really feeling the Wrestle Dream card. Again, because AEW just did 2 pay-per-views a week separated from each other, and now we're getting another one. It's like, oh my God. And this is coming right after they just did the big Grand Slam Dynamite and the whole week of big shows. And I'm like, good God, nothing means anything anymore. It's just, we're expected to get excited for everything that they do, and it's impossible. You can't constantly blow your load every other week. At least that's my opinion. And again, this is a criticism I've had of WWE for years, and now AEW's gone right down that same path. And I'm like, man. And now I've also heard that there's talks of AEW getting onto streaming, which I think would be great for them. I think that's a huge step forward. I think in this day and age, you need to be on streaming in some way, shape, or form, and they've got a pretty impressive, when you consider Ring of Honor and what they've done in just the short time that they've existed, they've probably got a pretty good tape library already, and if they could maybe partner up with a few other indie feds, they could even increase that and make it even more impressive. But the sheer glut of content that's being produced on a weekly basis is just way too much from the 2 major companies, and it's I don't know what you do. I mean, obviously contracts are signed, deals are in place. You can't just get rid of cut the TV time in half and be done with it. You can't just do that. It is what it is. This is what they're committed to. So it's not like you can start canceling shows left and right. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying it's a lot harder to enjoy the product when they're trying to take over my entire week. It's like, look, dude, I've got a newborn daughter. I've got a full-time job. I don't get time to watch all this every week. I don't. And NXT is an easy one to skip. Ring of Honor is an easy one to skip, but Rampage is kind of an easy one to skip. And you're making skipping your shows more of a desirable option because you're just throwing way too much at the screen. But, what can you do? So, anything else that happened? I guess I can talk about some people jumping ship. Jade Cargill is signed with WWE. I say congratulations to her. I think, and this is coming from somebody who likes Jade. I think when you look at the Bret Hart metric system of, looks, promos, and match quality, rank you at 1 to 10 on each of those areas. Jade's like about as close to a 10 out of 10 as you could possibly be. I think she looks like a star. She has a very impressive look and presence to her. I remember when she came out at that one pay-per-view dressed as Chitara, and I was like, damn, she looks good. She looks good in that getup. She looked amazing. Promo, she's probably better than most. I would say about maybe a 7 or an 8 on promos. I think she's pretty good at that and comes across naturally, which a lot of younger talents struggle with. She seems to be pretty good at that. I think her weakest area is in ring. She's a little clunky in there sometimes, maybe a little bit like 2 left feet in there sometimes. She's got some rough edges, and maybe sending her to NXT for a little bit would give them a star that's worth checking out, because I would probably consider watching NXT for Jade Cargill because she does interest me. And also, like, give her a way to kind of, like, sand off the rough edges a little bit and get her, develop her and get her ready for the main roster. Because I think star quality-wise, I mean, she looks better than just about any female wrestler you could possibly imagine today. She looks like a superstar. It's just a matter of, like, refining her, getting her to develop, and getting her ready to be a potential women's main event superstar. So I wish her all the best, and I think WWE could be a very good environment for her. We'll just have to wait and see how it all goes. And there's also talk that Edge might be showing up in AEW as soon as this week. To me, like, Edge is kind of like, the best years of his career are done, but he's never been in an environment outside of WWE, at least not since he became a major star. And it would be interesting to see what he can do in another company. And so I'm willing to give it a shot. I'm willing to say, it's like, okay, that'll be exciting, it'll be interesting, and we'll see what he can do. He came back from the neck injury and looked pretty good. And but he's no spring chicken anymore, and I think that's worth keeping in mind. And I just hope if he does go to AEW that he does well and is able to help out the show and help fill the void left behind by CM Punk, because it feels like, especially on Collision, it feels like something's lacking now that Punk's no longer there. But that's the hand they've been dealt, unfortunately. But yeah, if Edge goes there, wish him all the best. There's talk that Mercedes Moné might show up this weekend as well. I wouldn't be surprised. I think they wanted to bring her in for Forbidden Door, possibly for All In Wembley as well, but her injury prevented that. But if she's ready to go now, let's bring her on board and see what she can do. I felt like some of the stuff I saw from her in New Japan was kind of lacking, but maybe in an AEW environment she can do better and accentuate her positives and hide the negatives a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. But speaking of AEW, they do have a pay-per-view this weekend. I'm going to preview the card, although I don't know why I'm bothering, because this is a pretty... I don't know, it feels like a bunch of randomly slapped together matches. And it's an Antonio Inoki tribute show, which I think is great, and that's fine, and I appreciate that. But it's also like not the most story-driven show, and it's hard to be excited about this thing when they just got done doing 2 pay-per-views on top of each other. But going over the card, we've got Ricky Starks versus Wheeler Yuta. Ricky better go over. I don't know why they didn't just... I don't know. It felt like Ricky Starks and Danielson was the story they were going, but they've already blown those matches off on TV and pay-per-view, and the last pay-per-view, that feels like it was yesterday. So this just feels like Ricky Starks is getting table scraps. I mean, he better go over here. I mean, he's the heads and shoulders above Wheeler Yuta. And I get they wanted to do the other match with Danielson, which I'll get into that, but I don't know. This just feels kind of random to me. Then we got a 4-way match with the winners getting a title shot at is it the ROH or the AEW? See, I don't even know who's fighting for what title anymore. A 4-way tag match for the AEW World titles. It's the Young Bucks taking on the Guns, taking on the Lucha Brothers, taking on Orange Cassidy and Hook. This is going to be a pinball match. It's going to be one of those multi-man car wreck matches that I've become remarkably numb to as the years have gone on because they all look the same to me after a while. The one might expect the Young Bucks to win this, but I feel like I've gotten my fill of FTR versus the Bucks, so it's like I try something different. Like this Orange Cassidy Hook pairing seems like it could be kind of interesting, or I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really care either, but it is what it is. Then for the ROH World Championship and the Strong Openweight Championship, it's going to be Eddie Kingston defending both of his titles against the ROH Pure Champion Katsuyori Shibata. Why don't they put the Pure title on the line there too? I mean, what? Hey, it's 3 titles on the line. Why not just be silly with it and just put every belt on the line? Why not? They've got 845 belts. What's throwing one more into this match? What harm is that going to do? Anyway, Eddie Kingston probably retains here, I would imagine. Then we get the TBS Championship, Chris Statlander defending against Julia Hart, who they've been pushing on TV. I don't dislike Julia Hart or anything like that. I don't see her winning this. I think they're giving her the Abaddon push because Abaddon was somebody that they were pushing pretty hot and heavy for a minute there, and then they just fed her to the champion, and then that was pretty much the end of her. So I anticipate something similar to that is going to happen here. Then we've got a 2-on-1 handicap match for the ROH World Tag Team titles. MJF defending against the Righteous. MJF will probably get a replacement partner, but we're doing that angle right now where Adam Cole is hurt, but a mysterious group of masked men and somebody wearing MJF's devil mask beat up Jay White backstage, so it looks like that's going to play into this in some way, shape, or form. I don't know what, but I anticipate we'll probably see the ROH World titles change hands, unless they're doing something with ROH that, like I said, they're keeping the ROH titles on bigger names to kind of get it ready for something, whether that be the closure of ROH or the promotion of ROH into something else. I don't know, but I'll go with title retention here, although I wouldn't be surprised if the Righteous won. I'm fine with MJF not defending the AEW World title on the show because he just had a big match with Joe on TV, and it's like, hey, if you're going to do that match on TV, no reason to rush another AEW World title match onto the card. Then we've got a 6-man tag team match. Chris Jericho teaming up with the Golden Elite versus the Don Callis family. Konosuke Takeshita, Sammy Guevara, and Will Ospreay. This should be a heated match. I'm actually kind of digging the storyline going on between Sammy and Chris and Sammy's ultimate heel turn. So this could be fun. And I think Jericho teaming up with Kenny feels like a big deal considering how heated their past is. So yeah, this could be interesting. I'll pick, I don't know, maybe, because it feels like the Don Callis family has won all the matches and I'm all for heels coming out on top, and I imagine this will probably be more of the same, kind of keep the faces chasing them and keep the story developing. So I'll pick the heels to ultimately win this. Then we've got a 2 out of 3 falls match for the TNT Championship. The newly crowned TNT Champion, now officially the TNT Champion, Christian Cage versus Darby Allin. Christian's been one of the better parts of AEW lately, and he was when they brought him in, I was like, really? We're bringing in Christian? I mean, nothing against Christian. I like him, but it's like, really? This is treated like a big deal? But he's doing pretty well right now, and I'm kind of digging this stuff. So, hey, it is what it is. This should be a fun match. I wouldn't be surprised if Darby won the title here, but we will see. We'll see how that goes. This will probably end up being one of the more exciting parts of the show, given who's involved and the fact that it actually does have a story for the most part. Then we've got FTR defending the AEW World titles against Aussie Open. Now, this right here is what is wrong with modern wrestling, where when I talk about them chasing star ratings, this is a match where on paper it's like, oh my god, look at these two amazing teams. These two teams are amazing. They're going to tear the house down and have this awesome, awesome match. But they didn't think about Aussie Open, the last time they were on pay-per-view with AEW, they lost on the pre-show to MJF and Adam Cole for the secondary tag titles, which would be the ROH tag titles. And now, all of a sudden, they're getting a title match for the big AEW world titles, the main world tag team titles. I'm like, where did they, like, again, wins and losses are supposed to matter here, right? How did Aussie Open leapfrog everybody and get an AEW title shot? It doesn't make any sense. But they thought, oh, just slap this match on here. It'll be completely fine. I'm like, no, I'm kind of calling bullshit on this. Yeah, they'll go out there and they'll have a great match. I think FTR is great. I think Aussie Open is winning people over now. I think they've proven to be a really solid team. But I don't think I don't think just randomly giving Aussie Open a tag title shot is going to, like... It doesn't make the match interesting to me. And it's like, and Aussie Open is not like, yeah, wrestling fans who are diehard nerds like myself, they know who they are, but most general public don't. And Aussie Open hasn't been promoted that well to the AEW audience, so this match just feels random, so who cares? I'll pick FTR to retain, but like I said, who cares? Then we've got two big singles matches to close out the card. We got Hangman Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland. I have absolutely no idea what the story is here or what's going on or what the conflict is between these two. I thought Hangman's promo on this week's Dynamite was bizarre and baffling and just sounded like rambling nonsense where he was probably alluding to CM Punk, but why on earth would you do that? It's like, Hangman, I liked you better when you were just a beer-drinking cowboy. I mean, that was when you were at this best. This whole, like, Dark Cloud shit that you're doing, like, it's not very good. And I'm just, Hangman is a lot less interesting now than he was, in the early days of AEW, at least in my opinion. Swerve, on the other hand, has kind of won me over. When they first brought him in, I was like, really? We're bringing in Swerve? I'm like, okay, I guess. But he's kind of won me over. I'm like, okay, he's kind of a great heel, and I'm kind of digging it. So, yeah. I kind of hope Swerve goes over. I'm like, honestly, give it to the better character, but it'll probably be Adam Page who goes over. Again, there's another perfect example. These two could probably have, a really good match and tear the house down and all that stuff that gets you star ratings, but the story here is just non-existent. It makes no sense to me. It's like, why did they get a contract signing? What is so heated about the rivalry between these two where they get a contract signing? Like one of those segments. I don't get it. I don't get it. It was just... I don't know, didn't tickle my fancy, but again, I'm sure they'll go out there and have a really good match. And speaking of going out there and having a really good match, Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr., a match that is being sold entirely on how good of a technical wrestling dream match it's going to be, and that's all. There is no story, there is no conflict. Zack Sabre Jr. has not even been on TV with them, but this is likely going to close the pay-per-view because the show's in Seattle, which is Danielson's home state. And I imagine this is going to be the closer for the night. It's the match that they wanted to do at Forbidden Door and couldn't do because Danielson was hurt. And again, terrific workers, both guys. And I've said before, Zack Sabre Jr. is probably my favorite worker in rings, as far as in-ring technical ability goes. He's probably my favorite guy to watch now in the modern era. He's probably like a modern-day Bret Hart to me, where every little thing he does matters. And he's fun to watch in that regard, but what's the story here? There's no story. It's just, hey, we've got this wrestling dream match. Here you go. And that's all the thought that seemingly went into it. And I'm just kind of, I don't know. It's not interesting to me, unfortunately, and it should be because it's Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. You couldn't come up with a single story, a storyline to have this match make some kind of sense or to have some kind of an extra oomph added to it beyond just, hey, look at these two really good technical wrestlers and have a main event a pay-per-view. It'll be great. And it's like, okay, fine. Fine. Zack Sabre Jr. will probably show up on Collision this week, but it's like, that's too little too late. It's the week of the show, and it's like, maybe you shouldn't do pay-per-views every month. I don't know. Because now it feels like you're trying way too hard to try and make these pay-per-views worth it, and it's just... I don't know, I feel like AEW is just producing way too much content, which was the main topic of this video. But I think I've rambled on long enough. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Hopefully, you all have a great weekend. If you're going to watch Wrestle Dream, I hope you enjoy it. And I will have another video out next week. I am currently in the process of watching Wrestlers on Netflix, the docuseries about Al Snow's version of OVW. And it is very interesting. So once I'm done watching that, I'll have things to say about it in my next video. But until then, you can follow me on Twitter, at Patrick G Book. Link is in the description. And my books, Godzilla the Monster Fight Record, Volumes 1 and 2, are available for purchase on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. Those links are also in the description. But I am done for today. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you all later.